I'm Samantha Mitchell, 32 and standing on the balcony of my $6 million ocean villa, watching guests arrive for my housewarming party. Everyone's laughing, champagne glasses clinking, ocean breeze perfect. But there's a hollow feeling in my chest where family should be. My father's words still ring in my ears. We're not coming to watch you show off. Then I freeze. In the crowd below, I spot someone who shouldn't be here. Someone who swore they'd never speak to me again. Before I dive into this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to create your own path despite family opposition. Trust me, this journey from betrayal to triumph is one you won't want to miss. Growing up in Minneapolis, I was always the odd one out in my family. Our modest two-story house in a middle-class neighborhood was where I learned my first lessons about betrayal. My father, Richard, worked as an accountant at the same firm for 25 years. He believed in stability, predictability, and following the rules. My mother, Deborah, taught third grade at the local elementary school. She was quieter than my father, but just as traditional in her expectations. Then there was my brother, Jackson, 2 years older, and the golden child. He played football, joined the right clubs, and never questioned our parents' vision for his future. College, corporate job, marriage to his high school sweetheart, and grandchildren for our parents by the time he was 30. I was different from the start. While Jackson was throwing footballs, I was dismantling computers. When he was going to prom, I was building websites for local businesses. My parents viewed my interests with a mixture of confusion and disapproval. Computers are for boys, my mother would say, while my father would add, "That's not going to get you a husband, Samantha." By 16, I had created my first app, a simple program that helped students organize their homework assignments. It gained enough traction at my high school that a local news station did a feature on me. My parents seemed uncomfortable with the attention. "Don't let this go to your head," my father warned. "You still need to focus on college." College was always part of the plan, and my parents had supposedly been saving for both Jackson and me. I had my sights set on MIT or Stanford somewhere with a strong computer science program. Jackson had attended the state university on a partial football scholarship, but dropped out in his junior year to start a sporting goods store. A real business. My father had called it proudly. The first real betrayal came during my senior year of high school. I had been accepted to Stanford with a partial scholarship, but would still need the college fund my parents had been building since my birth to attend. "We need to talk about college," my father said one evening, his face serious as we sat at the dinner table. "I'm so excited about Stanford," I said, not yet sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "The program is exactly what I need to develop my ideas further." My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. "Sweetie, there's been a change in plans." "What kind of change?" I asked, fork halfway to my mouth. "We've had to redirect your college fund," my father said firmly. "Jackson's business needs capital to grow. He has a real business plan, real inventory, a real future." I felt like I'd been punched. "You gave my college money to Jackson? All of it." "Don't be selfish, Samantha," my mother chided. "Your brother has a family to support." Jackson had recently married his girlfriend who was expecting their first child. "And what about my future?" I demanded, tears starting to form. My father's expression hardened. "Those computer games you make aren't a real career plan. Jackson is selling actual products people need. Besides, you can go to community college for 2 years, then transfer. It'll be much more practical." That night, I cried until I couldn't breathe. My dreams seemed to collapse around me, and the people who should have supported me had chosen my brother instead. Not because he deserved it more, but because they understood his path. They couldn't see value in mine. The next morning, I called Rachel Thompson, my computer science teacher who had become a mentor. Over coffee at a local cafe, I poured out the whole story. "This isn't the end," Rachel said firmly. "It's the beginning of you taking control of your own destiny. Apply for every scholarship you can find. It'll help with recommendations. Take out loans if you need to, but don't give up on your dreams because others can't see them yet." That conversation changed everything. With Rachel's help, I secured additional scholarships, applied for student loans, and lined up part-time work on campus. I would make it to Stanford not because of my parents' support, but despite their lack of it. When I announced my plans at dinner a week later, my father scoffed. "You're being unrealistic. You'll be in debt for years." "Maybe," I replied, a new confidence in my voice. "But it'll be building the future I believe in." Jackson, who had been silent during these exchanges, finally spoke up. "Come on, Sam, don't be dramatic. My store is going to support the whole family eventually. You can work for me after community college. I looked at my brother, the favored child, who had never had to fight for recognition or support, and realized he couldn't even see the unfairness. In his mind, and in my parents', this was just the natural order of things. That was the moment I understood that to become who I wanted to be, I would have to leave behind not just my home, but the very idea that my family would ever truly support my dreams. Stanford's campus felt like freedom. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who didn't think my ambitions were unusual or my interests were strange. My roommate, an engineering major named Kelsey, didn't bat an eye when I stayed up until 3 a.m. coding. My professors pushed me to think bigger, not smaller. Financial reality meant I couldn't just focus on classes. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus tech support desk, plus another 10 hours doing freelance web development. Sleep became a luxury, but I didn't mind. Every hour worked was another hour invested in my independence. My parents called sporadically, conversations brief and surface level. "Are you eating enough?" my mother would ask. While my father wanted to know if I was being practical about my major, neither ever asked about my classes or the projects I was developing. When I tried to explain my work on a new app that connected students for study groups, my father interrupted with, "That's nice, but have you thought about minoring in business or education? You know, as a backup plan." During my sophomore year, I developed my first commercially viable app, a language learning program that used AI to customize vocabulary lessons based on user interests. I called it Lingua Match, and within 3 months of launch, it had 50,000 downloads. When winter break came around, I returned home with excitement bubbling inside me. I had actual success to share, something tangible even my parents might understand. At dinner my first night back, I pulled out my phone to show them the download statistics and the positive reviews. "That's nice, honey," my mother said, barely glancing at the screen. "Jackson's store is doing really well too. He just hired a second employee." "It's just a phone game, Samantha," my father added, dismissing months of my hard work with 5 words. "Jackson is building something real, something that will last." I put my phone away, the familiar feeling of invisibility settling over me. Later that evening, I overheard my father talking to Jackson in the kitchen. "She's still playing around with those computer things at that fancy school," he said. "All that money for what? She could have gotten the same education at State and saved a fortune. She always has to do things the hard way," Jackson replied with a chuckle. I slipped back upstairs, refusing to let them see me cry again. The real blow came 2 days later. Jackson asked to meet for coffee, claiming he wanted to reconnect, since we'd grown apart. I agreed, hoping perhaps my brother might see me differently than our parents did. At the coffee shop, after some small talk, Jackson leaned forward eagerly. "I've been thinking about expanding the store's online presence. Maybe creating an app that helps people find the right sporting equipment based on their needs." "That's actually a good idea," I said, genuinely surprised. "You'd need to incorporate user metrics and product specifications, but it could work." "Exactly." Jackson's eyes lit up. "I was hoping you could tell me more about how your app works, the technical side, you know? Maybe show me some of your code as a starting point." Something felt off. "You want to see my proprietary code? That's not how this works, Jackson. I can recommend some resources to learn coding, or you could hire a developer." His enthusiasm dimmed. "Come on, Sam. We're family. Why would you make me pay some stranger when you already know how to do it? Don't be selfish." That word again, selfish. The family weapon of choice whenever I didn't sacrifice my interests for theirs. I left the coffee shop with an uneasy feeling. 2 weeks later, scrolling through local business news, while back at Stanford, I froze at a headline. "Local sporting goods store owner secures funding for innovative app." The article featured a picture of Jackson, proudly describing his new venture, an app that sounded remarkably similar to Lingua Match, but focused on sports equipment instead of language learning. He hadn't just asked for inspiration, he had stolen my concept, architecture, even my user interface design, based on what I'd shown him on my phone. Worse, he had pitched it to my father's business connections as his own brilliant idea. I called home immediately, shaking with rage and betrayal. "Jackson is using my work," I said when my father answered. "He stole my app concept and is passing it off as his own." There was a long pause before my father responded. "Samantha, this is exactly the problem with you. Always competing with your brother instead of supporting him. He came up with this idea independently. If anything, He inspired your little language program. That's not true and you know it, I nearly shouted. My app launched months ago. I've been working on it for over a year. Don't raise your voice to me, he snapped. Jackson has been planning this for a long time. Just because you rushed something similar to market doesn't mean he stole anything. You're just jealous of your brother's potential. The family dinner during spring break was the breaking point. Jackson sat smugly across from me, as my parents fawned over his entrepreneurial spirit. His app was still in development, funded by an investor my father had introduced him to, while mine had just crossed 100,000 downloads. Maybe you could help your brother with the technical aspects, my mother suggested, as if I should be grateful for the opportunity to assist my own plagiarist. I have my own company to run. I replied coldly. Company? It's an app, Samantha, not General Motors. My father scoffed. This attitude is exactly why people find you difficult. Something snapped inside me. My attitude is why I'm succeeding despite never having your support. Jackson took my college fund, stole my ideas, and you're still treating him like he's the second coming while I'm just playing around. I'm done trying to prove myself to you. I left the table, packed my bags, and booked a flight back to California that night. As I waited for my Uber to the airport, my mother came outside. You're overreacting, she said. Family should come first. I agree, I replied. That's why your betrayal hurts so much. Back at Stanford, I found solace in friendship with Zoe Chen, a brilliant computer science major who became the sister I wished I had. When I told her about my family, she didn't dismiss my pain or tell me to get over it. Family is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down, she said simply. If they can't see your value, that's their loss. With Zoe's encouragement, I threw myself into my studies and my business. When graduation day came, I had honors in computer science and a profitable app with over 500,000 users. My parents and Jackson attended the ceremony, maintaining appearances, but their congratulations felt hollow. As we posed for a photo, me in cap and gown, diploma in hand, my father whispered, I hope now you'll consider something more stable than app development. I smiled for the camera, already planning my move to San Francisco, and the next chapter of my life, one where I would no longer seek the approval that would never come. San Francisco welcomed me with fog-shrouded hills, impossibly steep streets, and the electric energy of innovation. My tiny apartment in the Mission District was barely 500 square feet, shared with 3 other recent graduates, a UX designer, a marketing major, and a fellow programmer. We converted our living room into a makeshift office, fueled by cheap coffee and expensive dreams. The reality of the tech industry hit hard. Being a successful student at Stanford didn't automatically translate to being taken seriously in Silicon Valley. As one of the few women in most meetings, I often found my ideas attributed to male colleagues or dismissed until a man repeated them. At one pitch meeting for additional funding for LinguaMatch, an investor interrupted my technical explanation to ask, Is there a CTO I could speak with about these details? I am the CTO, I replied evenly, as well as the CEO and founder. He had the grace to look embarrassed, but didn't invest. After 57 rejections, yes, I kept count. I secured a small round of funding from a venture capitalist named Diana Warren, who saw the potential in my vision to expand LinguaMatch into a broader communication platform. I'm not investing in just an app, Diana told me. I'm investing in you, Samantha. You have the determination to make this work. With funding secured, I rebranded the company as ConnectSphere and expanded the team, moving into a small office in Soma. The next 18 months were a blur of 18-hour days, product iterations, user testing, and growth strategies. We pivoted twice, nearly ran out of money once, and finally found our market fit with a comprehensive communication platform that bridged language barriers in real time for international businesses. I called my parents on the anniversary of ConnectSphere's launch, hoping to share my growing success. The company had just hit 1 million users and was finally consistently profitable. That's nice, dear, my mother said distractedly. Did you hear Jackson is expanding to a second location? Your father helped him secure a business loan. When I hung up, I felt the familiar sting of invisibility, but now it came with something new, the recognition that their approval no longer defined my worth. That clarity lasted until Uncle Frank called the next day. Samantha, I heard you've been struggling out there in California. I wanted to offer my help. Maybe it's time to come home and get a real job. Confused, I asked what he meant by struggling. Well, your parents mentioned your internet project isn't going well, and you're having a hard time making ends meet in that expensive city. They're worried about you. The betrayal felt like ice water in my veins. While I was building a multi-million-dollar company, my parents were telling the family I was failing. Whether from malice or an inability to understand my world, they were actively undermining my reputation. I spent the next family Christmas in Hawaii with Zoe's family, who toasted my success and asked thoughtful questions about my business. When relatives inquired why I wasn't in Minneapolis, I simply said, "I'm spending the holiday with people who celebrate my achievements, rather than diminish them." As ConnectSphere continued its upward trajectory, industry recognition followed. TechCrunch featured us as a startup to watch. I was named to Forbes 30 Under 30. At a conference in New York, I gave a keynote address on breaking communication barriers in global business. A reporter from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reached out for a feature story about a local success. When the article ran, with a photo of me in our now sleek office overlooking the bay, I received a text from my mother. "Why didn't you tell us your company was doing so well? We had to find out from the newspaper." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I've been telling you for years. You chose not to hear it." The distance between us grew, not just in miles but in understanding. My world of tech innovation, venture capital, and scaling challenges had no reference point in their lives, and they made no effort to bridge that gap, to learn about my industry, or ask meaningful questions about my work. Instead, they continued to center Jackson in family conversations, though his sporting goods stores were struggling to compete with online retailers. My success became the elephant in the room, acknowledged only in passing, never celebrated. That Christmas, I sent expensive gifts to my parents and Jackson's family, ordered online, and delivered with professional wrapping. My mother called to thank me, adding, "It must be nice to be able to afford such extravagance. I hope you're saving enough for the future, though. These internet companies can disappear overnight." I closed my eyes, phone pressed to my ear, and realized a fundamental truth. No achievement would ever be enough to change how they saw me. I could become a billionaire, revolutionize global communication, win a Nobel Prize, and they would still worry about my retirement savings and remind me of the stability of government jobs. For the first time, this realization didn't hurt. It liberated me. I didn't need to keep seeking approval that would never come. I could simply live my life, build my company, and find fulfillment on my own terms. When ConnectSphere was featured in the Wall Street Journal the following spring, I didn't call home to share the news. When we reached 10 million users, I celebrated with my team and friends who understood the significance. When we moved into larger offices with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge, I sent no photos to Minneapolis. I was no longer the daughter desperately seeking validation. I had become Samantha Mitchell, CEO of ConnectSphere, defined by my vision and determination, not by my family's narrow expectations. 3 years after founding ConnectSphere, I sat across the table from executives of Tech Giant, one of the world's largest technology companies. Between us lay their offer, $25 million for complete acquisition of ConnectSphere, its technology, and its talent. "We believe your communication platform would integrate perfectly with our suite of productivity tools," said James Wilson, Tech Giant's head of acquisitions. "Our global reach could take ConnectSphere to the next level." My CFO, Mia Johnson, nudged my foot under the table. Our signal that the offer was good. Better than good, life-changing. "We're flattered by your interest," I replied coolly, years of investor meetings having taught me never to show excitement. "We'll need time to review the details and discuss with our board." Back at our office, Mia couldn't contain her enthusiasm. "Sam, do you realize what this means? This is the exit strategy of dreams. 25 million. You'd personally walk away with over 15 million after investor payouts." I should have felt elated. Instead, I felt conflicted. ConnectSphere was growing exponentially on its own. Our latest feature, real-time translation for video conferences, was revolutionary. Were we selling too soon? Was I giving up control of my vision right when it was gaining momentum? That evening, staring at the San Francisco skyline from my apartment, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my parents. Perhaps some small part of me still sought their guidance, or at least their recognition of this milestone. My father answered on the fourth ring. "Samantha, is everything all right? You never call on weeknights." The concern in his voice was only for a potential emergency, not interest in my life. I pushed past the familiar disappointment. "Everything's fine, Dad. Actually, I have some big news." Tech giant has offered to acquire ConnectSphere for $25 million. There was a pause. Then, tech giant? That big computer company? They want to buy your app. My company. I corrected. Yes, they believe our technology would enhance their global communication tools. I heard him call to my mother. Deborah, Samantha says some company wants to buy her internet thing. When he returned to the phone, his tone had shifted from surprise to directive. Well, you should definitely sell. Take the money and stop playing entrepreneur. You could come home, buy a nice house, maybe meet someone and settle down. No congratulations, no acknowledgement of what I'd built. Just instructions to cash out and return to the life they understood. I'm not sure I want to sell, I said carefully. We're growing rapidly, and I believe in our mission. Don't be foolish, Samantha. Nobody turns down that kind of money for some computer program. Just sell it and get a normal life. My mother took the phone. Sweetie, your father's right. You've had your adventure in California. Isn't it time to come home and think about your future? Start a family before it's too late. I ended the call with vague promises to consider their advice. A familiar hollowness expanding in my chest. They still couldn't see me, not the business I'd built, not my vision, not even the magnitude of what this offer represented in my industry. 2 days later, my assistant burst into my office. Samantha, your brother is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's insisting on seeing you. Jackson stood in our reception area, looking out of place in his polo shirt and khakis, amid the tech casual atmosphere of our office. Head aged in the years since I'd seen him last, thinning hair, slight paunch, lines around his eyes suggesting stress rather than laughter. Quite a setup you've got here, Sam, he said, following me into my glass-walled office. Dad told me about the acquisition offer. Pretty impressive. Thanks, I replied cautiously. What brings you to San Francisco? He settled into a chair opposite my desk. Well, I've been thinking about my next move. The sporting goods business is tough with all the online competition. When Dad mentioned your windfall, I thought maybe this was perfect timing for us to work together. Work together, I repeated, already sensing where this was heading. I've learned a lot about business management over the years. I could help you navigate this acquisition, make sure you're not getting taken advantage of. Then maybe we could start something new together with some of the proceeds. A family business. What do you say? The audacity was breathtaking. After years of dismissing my work, stealing my ideas, and enjoying my parents' financial and emotional support at my expense, he now wanted to position himself as my business advisor and partner. Who sent you, Jackson? Did you come up with this plan? Or did Dad? His expression flickered. What does it matter? We're family. We should be helping each other. Like you helped me by taking my college fund? Or by stealing my app concept? Or by letting our parents believe I was struggling when you knew I was succeeding? Come on, Sam. That's ancient history. Dad thought it would be good for us to reconnect, especially with this big deal happening. He thought you might need guidance from people who care about you, not just tech geeks and money people. There it was, the admission that our father had orchestrated this visit, sending Jackson as an emissary to handle me and my newfound wealth. Let me be clear, I said, standing up. I don't need your guidance on my acquisition. I don't need a family business. And I certainly don't need to share my success with people who never believed in it in the first place. Jackson's friendly facade crumbled. This is why people find you difficult, Sam. You've always been selfish, unwilling to help family. Some things never change. After he left, I called an emergency board meeting. Sitting around our conference table with the investors and advisors who had actually supported ConnectSphere's growth, I shared my decision. We're declining tech giant's offer. I announced, it undervalues what we've built and what we can become. ConnectSphere's mission isn't finished, and neither is mine as its leader. Diana Warren, my first investor, smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. This company has potential far beyond 25 million. And frankly, so do you, Samantha. The board unanimously supported my decision. When tech giant's executives called the next day, I thanked them for their interest but declined their offer. We're not for sale at this time. I told them, ConnectSphere is just getting started. That evening, I changed my phone number, cutting off the direct line my family had to me. It was time to move forward without the weight of their expectations and judgments. If they wanted to reach me, they would need to respect my boundaries and my achievements first. The decision to decline the acquisition proved prescient. Within 18 months, ConnectSphere's valuation reached $200 million as our user base exploded globally. The company that had started in my dorm room was now changing how the world communicated across languages and cultures. I had finally stopped seeking validation from people unwilling to give it, and instead found it in the impact of my work and the respect of those who recognized its value. The summer I turned 30, ConnectSphere reached a milestone that even the most optimistic projections hadn't predicted: 100 million users across 142 countries. Our latest round of funding valued the company at $200 million, and tech publications were calling our platform the new essential tool for global business. My life had transformed alongside the company. The tiny shared apartment was now a sleek loft in Pacific Heights. 18-hour workdays, punctuated by cheap takeout, had evolved into a more sustainable schedule with actual lunch breaks and occasional weekends off. I had built a leadership team. I trusted people chosen, not just for their skills, but for their alignment with the company's mission. "We need to celebrate properly," said Zoe, now my chief product officer, as we reviewed the latest user statistics. "Not just the standard tech company happy hour. Something meaningful." She was right. This achievement deserved recognition not just for the business metrics, but for the personal journey it represented. After careful consideration, I decided to purchase a property it had my eye on for months: a stunning ocean villa in Malibu, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific, 6 bedrooms, a private beach access, and enough space to host the entire company for events. The $6 million price tag would have seemed impossible to the college student working multiple jobs to make tuition payments. Now it represented not just financial success, but personal freedom, a symbol of what I'd built without family support or connections. 2 weeks after closing on the villa, my phone rang with a Minneapolis area code I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me. "Samantha? It's your mother. We got your new number from Jackson's wife's cousin, who works at your phone carrier." The invasion of privacy was presented as a clever achievement rather than a boundary violation. "We've been trying to reach you for months. I've been busy," I replied neutrally. "Well, we've been seeing your company in the news. Your father and I thought it might be time to visit you in California, see what you've built firsthand." The request surprised me. After years of dismissing my work, they suddenly wanted a tour? Part of me wanted to refuse outright, but curiosity won again. Maybe, after all this time, they were ready to see me for who I actually was. "I suppose that would be fine," I said cautiously. "When were you thinking of coming?" 2 weeks later, my parents arrived at ConnectSphere headquarters, looking out of place among the tech workers, with their standing desks and casual attire. My father wore a suit that had probably been fashionable in the early 2000s. My mother had dressed for church rather than a tech company visit. "This is certainly different," my father commented as I led them through the open workspace. "All these young people just sitting around on computers. How do you know they're actually working?" "We measure results, not hours in a chair," I explained, already feeling the familiar tension headache forming. My mother peered at a conference room where a team was video conferencing with colleagues in Tokyo. "Is this what your company does? Video calls? Isn't that already available?" "Our platform translates conversations in real time across 78 languages, Mom. Those people are speaking English and Japanese without interpreters." She replied, clearly unimpressed. "Seems like a lot of expensive space for something that happens on computers." The tour continued in this vein, my father questioning our business model, my mother making comments about the casual dress code and wasteful office amenities, like the coffee bar and relaxation spaces. When we reached my office, a glass-walled space with views of the bay, my father settled into one of my visitor chairs without invitation. "So, Samantha, your mother and I have been talking. Now that your internet business is doing well, I've been thinking of retiring early." "Oh." I kept my expression neutral, already sensing what was coming. "I could help manage your finances," he continued. "Make sure you're making smart investments with all this money coming in. Maybe set up some trusts for the family." My mother nodded encouragingly. "Your father has 30 years of accounting experience. Who better to help you?" "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but ConnectSphere has a full financial team, a CFO, investment advisors, tax specialists. They're experts in tech industry, finance specifically." My father waved this away. "Those people work for a paycheck. Family looks out for your best interests." Speaking of family, Jackson's oldest is starting college next year. We thought it would be nice if his successful aunt helped with tuition. Give back a little. And there it was, the real purpose of their visit. Not to see my achievements or understand my world, but to position themselves to benefit from it. After years of dismissing my work as a hobby and supporting Jackson at my expense, they now saw me as a resource to be tapped. I'm not comfortable mixing family and financial decisions that way, I said firmly. I'm happy to consider contributing to a college fund for my niece, but I'll do so directly, not through you or Jackson. My father's expression hardened. This success has changed you, Samantha. You used to understand the importance of family. I understand it perfectly, I replied. I also understand the importance of respect, which has been notably absent in how my career and choices have been treated. That evening, I took them to dinner at an upscale restaurant overlooking the city. After several glasses of wine, my father grew more direct. Your brother could use a position in your company. He has management experience, and his stores aren't doing as well with all the internet shopping these days. Jackson has no experience in tech, I pointed out. What position do you envision for him? Something executive, my mother chimed in. Vice president of something important sounding. He has a family to support. So do many of our employees, I countered. They were hired based on their skills and experience, not their family connections. The conversation deteriorated from there. By dessert, it was clear that they saw my success not as my achievement to be celebrated, but as a family resource to be distributed according to their judgment. Jackson's struggling businesses, his children's education, my parents' retirement comfort, all were presented as my responsibility now that I had made it. As I dropped them at their hotel, my mother hugged me stiffly. Think about what we've discussed, Samantha. Family should always come first. I watched them enter the lobby, a heavy realization settling over me. They had never come to understand or celebrate me. They had come to claim what they felt entitled to. In their eyes, my success wasn't mine, it belonged to the family unit, to be allocated as they saw fit. The next morning, I sent a text declining their suggestion of another dinner. I have work commitments. Safe travels home. It was the last direct communication we would have for months. The Malibu villa transformed from a real estate investment into a true home over the following months. I worked with an interior designer to create spaces that balanced luxury with comfort, modern aesthetics with warmth. The primary living area featured wall-to-wall windows that seemed to merge the house with the ocean beyond. I converted one of the bedrooms into a home office with technology that allowed me to manage ConnectSphere remotely when I needed ocean-inspired clarity. As the final touches were completed, artwork hung, custom furniture arranged, wine cellar stocked, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with the property's monetary value. This was a space I had created entirely on my own terms, reflecting my journey and tastes, rather than anyone else's expectations. You need to throw a proper housewarming, Zoe insisted during a weekend visit. This place deserves to be celebrated. And so do you. The idea took root. Not just a casual gathering, but an elegant event that would honor both the home and the path that had led me to it. I hired an event planner, selected a date 6 weeks out, and began crafting the guest list. Despite everything, family occupied a complicated space in my heart. After consideration, I decided to extend olive branches. I sent formal invitations to my parents, Jackson and his family, and a few extended relatives with whom I'd maintained sporadic contact. The invitation was simple but elegant, featuring a watercolor of the villa's ocean view. Please join me in celebrating my new home. It read, followed by the date, time, and Malibu address. I didn't expect enthusiastic acceptances, but the response still blindsided me. My father called 3 days after the invitations would have arrived in Minneapolis. This is absolutely ridiculous, Samantha. He began without preamble, his voice tight with anger. A beach mansion? Is this what you're wasting your money on? Hello to you too, Dad, I replied, struggling to keep my tone even. It's an investment property that also serves as don't give me investment talk. He cut in. This is showing off, plain and simple, flaunting your money to make the rest of us feel small. The accusation stung precisely because it was so far from my intention. That's not what this is about. I thought you might want to see where I live now. Be part of this milestone. We raised you better than this, Samantha. Your mother is upset about the example you're setting for Jackson's kids. All this excess, while family members are struggling with normal bills and responsibilities. I've offered to help with my niece's college, in your own controlling way, not as part of the family unit. And now this party, flying everyone out to California to see how much better you're doing than the rest of us. No, we won't be part of this spectacle. After he hung up, I sat in my oceanfront living room, phone still clutched in my hand, trying to process the conversation. My invitation, which had genuinely been an attempt at reconnection, had been interpreted as a deliberate act of humiliation. In their eyes, success itself was an act of aggression if it exceeded their expectations or understanding. My mother's text arrived the next morning. "Your father is right about the party, Samantha. This new money attitude doesn't suit you. Remember where you came from. We're simple people with simple values." Simple values. The phrase echoed in my mind. Wasn't working hard, building something meaningful, and creating opportunities for others aligned with good values? When had ambition become something shameful? I received no response from Jackson directly, but his wife sent a brief message. "We won't be attending due to prior commitments." Also, Jackson feels it's inappropriate to expose the children to such extravagance. The rejection was complete and public. Through family channels, I learned that Jackson had been telling relatives that I was showing off my millions while refusing to help family. He characterized my invitation as an attempt to rub everyone's noses in it, rather than a genuine desire to share my life. Most painful was discovering that my parents were actively discouraging other relatives from attending. "Samantha has forgotten where she comes from," my aunt reported being told. "This California lifestyle has changed her, and not for the better." The narrative they created bore no resemblance to reality, but it spread through the family ecosystem with the speed of particularly malicious gossip. Cousins I'd been close to growing up sent awkward messages declining the invitation. My father's brother, who had always been kind to me, called to say he thought it best to respect your parents' feelings on this. One evening, after another deflating conversation with a once close cousin, I broke down. Sitting on my deck overlooking the ocean, I sobbed with a depth of hurt I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Not because I needed their approval, but because the deliberate misrepresentation of my character and intentions cut to the bone. Zoe found me there, having let herself in with the key I'd given her for emergencies. "Your assistant called me," she explained, sitting beside me. "She was worried when you canceled all your meetings and weren't answering calls." Between tears, I explained the situation, the invitation, the rejection, the family campaign against me. Zoe listened without interruption, then took my hands in hers. "Sam, I need you to hear something. This isn't about you being changed by success or forgetting your roots. This is about them being unable to celebrate someone else's achievements, especially when those achievements challenge their worldview. But they're making me sound like some horrible, selfish person," I protested. "To people who matter, you're known by your actions, your integrity, your generosity, the way you treat your team, the impact of your work. The people who love you for who you are won't be swayed by secondhand narratives." She was right, of course, and as the pain began to subside, another emotion took its place: determination. I would not cancel my housewarming. I would not apologize for success achieved through hard work and innovation. I would celebrate with the people who had actually supported my journey, colleagues who had believed in ConnectSphere's mission, mentors who had guided me through challenges, friends who had provided emotional support when family had not. "We're going to make this the best damn housewarming party Malibu has ever seen," Zoe declared. "Not to show off, but to honor your journey and the amazing community you've built around you." That night, I revised the guest list. In place of biological family who had chosen not to attend, I expanded invitations to include every team member who had been with ConnectSphere from the early days, investors who had taken chances on us, and mentors who had provided guidance at critical junctures. My family had rejected my invitation out of resentment, masked as moral superiority, but in doing so, they had clarified something important. Family isn't defined by blood alone, but by who shows up, who celebrates your victories, who supports your growth, and who sees you for who you truly are. With renewed purpose, I threw myself into planning the housewarming. What had begun as a simple celebration evolved into something more meaningful, a gathering that would honor not just a physical space, but the journey and relationships that had made it possible. The event planner, Monica, entered into this vision with enthusiasm. "We want elegance without ostentation," I explained during our planning session at the villa. "Beautiful but welcoming, impressive but not intimidating." Together we selected a color palette inspired by the ocean view's blues, soft greens, silver accents. The menu would feature elevated comfort foods prepared by a chef known for local, sustainable ingredients. For music, we booked a small ensemble that could transition from classical during cocktail hour to contemporary as the evening progressed. As RSVPs arrived, I was touched by the enthusiastic responses. Diana Warren, my first investor, wrote, I wouldn't miss celebrating how far you and ConnectSphere have come. Rachel Thompson, my high school teacher turned mentor, was flying in from Minneapolis. I always knew you would create something extraordinary. Her note read, am honored to see it firsthand. Most moving was the response from my team members. Many wrote personal messages expressing what working at ConnectSphere meant to them, how it had changed their professional trajectories and lives. These weren't just employees coming for free food and drinks, they were people who felt genuinely connected to the company's mission and my leadership. As the guest list approached 200 confirmations, I received an unexpected RSVP via email. Dear Samantha, I was surprised and touched to receive your invitation. While we've been estranged for years, I've followed your success from afar with great pride. I would be honored to attend your housewarming. If it's uncomfortable given family dynamics, I completely understand. Your aunt, Catherine was my mother's younger sister, a relationship that had fractured long before my own family difficulties. I had included her on the invitation list more out of courtesy than expectation, assuming she would decline along with everyone else from Minneapolis. I called her immediately. Aunt Catherine, thank you for your RSVP. I'd love for you to come. Are you sure? She asked cautiously. I know how Deborah and Richard feel about your success. And they've never approved of me either. I'm hosting this party, not them, I replied firmly, and I'd genuinely like to reconnect with you. Her laugh held a hint of something bittersweet. We have more in common than you might realize, Samantha. I look forward to finally getting to know my niece as an adult. The conversation left me curious. Catherine had always been the family enigma, my mother's artistic, independent sister who had moved to New York in her 20s to pursue photography. Family lore painted her as the irresponsible one, the cautionary tale, the sister who had chosen a frivolous career over stability. Now I wondered how much of that narrative had been shaped by the same forces that had attempted to diminish my choices. A week before the party, Monica called with concerning news. We've received several inquiries about the event from people not on your guest list, she explained. 3 different cousins, an uncle, and your brother's mother-in-law have all contacted us asking for details, though none were invited. That's strange, I replied, puzzled. What kind of details? Mostly logistical, exact time, dress code, whether they can bring additional people. One asked if we could accommodate a last-minute RSVP for a party of 5. The situation became clearer the next day, when Zoe forwarded me a social media post from Jackson's wife. Family road trip to Malibu next weekend. Can't wait to see at Samantha Mitchell's beach mansion that everyone's talking about. Number family reunion. Number beach weekend. My brother and his family, who had explicitly declined my invitation with a disapproving message, were now planning to attend anyway, and had apparently spread the word to other relatives who hadn't been invited. This is bizarre, Zoe said when I called her. They reject your invitation, trash talk you to the family, then decide to come anyway and bring others. I think I know what's happening, I replied, a sinking feeling in my stomach. They want to see the house either out of curiosity or to confirm their narrative about my showing off, but they don't want to acknowledge the invitation or give me the satisfaction of an RSVP. The theory was confirmed when Jackson posted a photo of his packed SUV with the caption, heading to Cali to check on little sis. Someone needs to keep an eye on how all that tech money is being spent. Number family duty. The implication was clear. They were positioning this not as attending my invitation, but as some sort of family intervention or oversight mission. I felt a familiar mixture of hurt and frustration, but now with a new emotion. Resolve. We need to enhance security for the event, I told Monica. Only people on the approved guest list will be admitted, no exceptions. And I want a specific protocol for handling uninvited guests firmly, but without creating a scene. The day before the party, I received another surprise, an email from Uncle Robert, my father's brother, who had previously declined. Samantha, I've been thinking about my decision not to attend your housewarming. Your father is my brother, and I respect him, but I realize I've let his perspective unduly influence mine. I should form my own opinions and support my niece's achievements. If the invitation is still open, I would like to come. Alone, to avoid family complications. This small act of independence moved me deeply. I immediately called to confirm he was welcome, arranging for a hotel room for him since he had canceled his previous booking when declining. On the morning of the party, I woke early and walked along the private beach below the villa. The Pacific stretched endlessly before me, waves rhythmically reshaping the shoreline, a reminder that change, while sometimes uncomfortable, was a natural force that could create beauty. Back at the house, staff were arranging flowers, setting up the bar, and transforming the already beautiful space into something magical. I changed into a simple blue dress that echoed the ocean colors, applied light makeup, and took a moment in my bedroom to center myself. Whatever happened today, whether my uninvited family created drama or stayed away, this celebration represented a milestone worth honoring. I had built something meaningful, created a beautiful home, and surrounded myself with people who valued me authentically. From my bedroom window, I saw the first guests arriving, Diana Warren and her husband, looking elegant and relaxed as they were escorted from their car to the front entrance. I took a deep breath and headed downstairs to greet them, determined to focus on those who had chosen to celebrate with me rather than those who might arrive to judge. The security team I'd hired was professional and discreet, positioned at the property entrance with guest lists and clear instructions. As I descended the grand staircase to welcome Diana and the early arrivals, I silently prepared myself for whatever the day might bring. The Malibu villa transformed under Monica's expert direction. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Pacific's sapphire expanse. White floral arrangements with subtle blue accents adorned tables and countertops. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while the string quartet played in the main living area. By 6 o'clock, the space hummed with conversation and laughter. Diana Warren arrived with a stunning piece of glass art for the house, from a local artist in San Francisco. She explained. I thought it captured something of ConnectSphere's essence, communication flowing across barriers. Rachel Thompson, my high school mentor, flew in from Minneapolis with a small box containing floppy disks. Your very first coding projects, she said, eyes twinkling. I kept them all these years, knowing they were the beginning of something important. The ConnectSphere team arrived together in a chartered bus, cheering when they saw me. Mia, my CFO, presented a framed chart showing the company's growth trajectory, from dorm room to ocean view. She said, hugging me. And still climbing. As guests mingled, I found myself constantly checking the entrance, torn between hoping my family would stay away and wondering if they would actually appear. Around 7:30, my security team's earpiece crackled. Miss Mitchell, we have a situation at the gate. Your Aunt Catherine has arrived. I hurried to greet her, finding a striking woman in her late 50s with my mother's features but an entirely different energy, confident, artistic, with a camera bag slung over one shoulder, and a vintage dress that somehow looked both bohemian and elegant. Samantha, she said, embracing me. What an extraordinary home. Thank you for including me despite the complications. I'm so glad you're here, I replied genuinely. I've been looking forward to getting to know you. Catherine presented me with a leather-bound album. I thought you might appreciate this. It's a collection of family photographs, the real history, not the sanitized version your parents prefer, including quite a few of you as a child that capture your spirit before they tried to contain it. I opened it to find black and white portraits spanning decades, my grandparents as young adults, my mother and Catherine as children, and indeed, photos of me had never seen. In one, about age 7, I was intently dismantling a radio, my expression focused and alive. You were always meant for a different path, Catherine said softly. Just as I was. That's why they couldn't understand either of us. We moved to a quiet corner of the deck, where Catherine shared her own story of family estrangement, how her choice to pursue photography instead of teaching had been deemed selfish and impractical by my grandparents and later my mother. Your mother never forgave me for leaving Minneapolis, she explained. Not because she missed me, but because my departure challenged the narrative that staying was the only respectable choice. My success in New York was reframed as Catherine showing off, or living an unstable lifestyle, never as achievement or courage. The parallels to my own experience were uncanny. Did it ever get better? I asked. Not with your mother, she admitted, but I built a life I love, with people who value creativity and independence. I haven't regretted my choice for a minute, though I've grieved the relationship we might have had. Our conversation was interrupted by another security alert. Miss Mitchell, your Uncle Robert has arrived. Also, there's a situation at the main gate. A group insisting their family members is demanding entry. They're not on the list. My heart sank. I'll be right there. Please escort Uncle Robert in and offer him a drink. At the property entrance, I found exactly what I'd feared. Jackson, his wife, their 3 children, my parents, and 2 cousins with their spouses, 11 people in total. none of whom had RSVP'd affirmatively. Samantha, my father began imperiously, this is ridiculous. Your security people won't let your own family into your party. I kept my voice calm but firm. This is an invited event. You explicitly declined the invitation, saying it was inappropriate and ostentatious. I respected that choice. We changed our minds, my mother said, as if this explained everything. We're already here in California. You can't turn family away. Actually, I can, I replied, surprising even myself with my steadiness. This is my home, and this event is for people who have supported my journey. You've made your feelings about my choices very clear, and am no longer willing to pretend otherwise for the sake of appearances. Jackson stepped forward, his children looking uncomfortable beside him. This is exactly the problem, Samantha. Success has made you think you're better than your family. Too good for the people who raised you. No, Jackson. Success has given me the clarity to recognize unhealthy patterns, and the strength to establish boundaries. This isn't about being too good for anyone. It's about surrounding myself with people who celebrate rather than diminish me. My father's face darkened. So that's it? You're choosing these California strangers over your own blood. I'm choosing respect, I corrected. When you're ready to offer that, we can revisit our relationship. But you don't get to reject an invitation, spread negativity about me to the extended family, and then show up expecting to be welcomed as if none of that happened. My mother's expression shifted to the wounded martyrdom I knew well. I never thought my own daughter would humiliate us this way, turning us away in front of everyone. I invited you properly, I reminded her. You chose to decline. This situation is entirely of your own making. After more uncomfortable back and forth, they finally departed, my father threatening vague consequences, my mother in tears, Jackson muttering about ingratitude. I returned to the party physically shaking but emotionally clearer than I'd felt in years. Uncle Robert found me moments later, offering a glass of champagne. I saw what happened, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I think you handled it perfectly. And this. He gestured to the gathering around us. This is something to be proud of, Samantha. Not just the house, but the community you've built. As the evening continued, I was introduced to Aunt Catherine's partner, a renowned sculptor who had collaborated with her on several exhibitions. Uncle Robert shared stories of my childhood that highlighted my early technological curiosity, offering a perspective on my younger self I'd never heard before. Your father didn't know what to make of you, he admitted. Richard has always believed in a very specific path to respectability. When you showed interest that didn't fit that path, I think it frightened him more than anything. The party reached its peak around 10, the house filled with genuine warmth and connection. Standing on the main deck, overlooking both the ocean and the gathering inside, I was approached by Zoe. How are you feeling? She asked, linking her arm through mine. Surprisingly good, I admitted. Turning them away was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but also one of the most necessary. Look around, Zoe said, gesturing to the rooms filled with people engaged in animated conversation. This is your real family, Sam. The one you've chosen, and the one that's chosen you back. The one that celebrates your light instead of trying to dim it. As if to underscore her point, Diana clinked her glass for attention and raised a toast. To Samantha Mitchell, a visionary who saw connections where others saw barriers, who built bridges instead of walls, and who created not just a remarkable company, but a community bound by shared purpose. May this beautiful home be filled with the same warmth, creativity, and authenticity that you bring to everything you do. The guests raised their glasses, faces bright with genuine affection and respect. In that moment, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was, the ache of family rejection finally began to subside, replaced by something more powerful, the recognition that I had, indeed, found my true home. Dawn broke over the Pacific in a spectacular display of pinks and golds. I sat on the deck of my villa, wrapped in a light blanket, watching the play of light on water. The last guests had departed around 2 in the morning, but sleep had eluded me. Too much had happened, too many emotions stirred up, too many revelations to process. My phone vibrated with a text from Aunt Catherine. Breakfast? I know a lovely spot in Venice Beach, would love to continue our conversation before my flight. As I typed a quick acceptance, another notification appeared. A message from Uncle Robert. Your parents and Jackson are at my hotel. They're insisting on seeing you before they leave California. I've told them it's your decision. No pressure either way. I stared at the screen, conflicted. Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect the clarity and peace I'd fought so hard to achieve, but another part recognized that without a final conversation, without addressing the patterns directly, we would remain locked in this dysfunctional dance indefinitely. Tell them ill, meet them at my house at noon, I replied. Just the three of them, no spouses, no children. Uncle Robert's response came quickly. I'll let them know. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, Samantha. Not just for your success, but for your courage. The morning with Aunt Catherine was a gift. 3 hours of conversation that filled in family history gaps and provided context for my parents' rigid worldview. She shared stories of our grandparents' financial struggles during the recession of the 1970 seconds, how it had instilled in my mother a desperate need for security and conformity. Deborah watched our parents nearly lose everything, Catherine explained over espresso. It shaped her deeply, this belief that coloring inside the lines was the only protection against disaster. When I chose an arts career, it wasn't just disappointing to her. It was threatening. It challenged her survival strategy. And when I chose tech entrepreneurship, I began seeing the pattern. Exactly. Your choices triggered her deepest fears, just as mine did. That doesn't excuse how she's treated you, but it might help you understand it's not really about you. It never was. By the time we parted with promises to stay connected, I felt fortified for the confrontation ahead. This wasn't about seeking approval anymore, but about stating my truth and establishing clear boundaries for any future relationship. I arrived home to find the cleaning crew finishing their work, the villa restored to pristine condition after the party. At precisely noon, my security team alerted me to my family's arrival. Send them to my home office, I instructed, choosing the space deliberately for its views of both the ocean and the sleek ConnectSphere awards displayed on custom shelving. They entered awkwardly, my father attempting to project authority, my mother's expression a careful mask of maternal concern. Jackson somewhere between defiant and uncomfortable. Thank you for agreeing to see us, my father began, his tone suggesting he was doing me a favor, rather than the reverse. I thought we should have a clear conversation before you return to Minneapolis, I replied, not offering them seats yet. Last night highlighted issues we've been avoiding for years. You embarrassed us in front of everyone, my mother said immediately. Turning away your own family like we were strangers. That's what we need to address, I said calmly. The fact that you believe family status entitles you to disregard boundaries, decline invitations, and then show up anyway expecting accommodation. We're not here to be lectured about boundaries, my father cut in. We're here because it's time you recognized your responsibilities to this family. You've achieved financial success, great. Now it's time to support the people who raised you, who made that success possible. There it was, the entitlement laid bare. That's an interesting perspective, I replied. Let's review exactly how you made my success possible. You redirected my college fund to Jackson's failing business. You dismissed my academic achievements and early entrepreneurial efforts. You spread rumors to the extended family that I was struggling when I was actually succeeding. You attempted to pressure me into selling my company prematurely, and most recently, you rejected my invitation while bad-mouthing me to relatives. The recitation hung in the air between us. My mother looked away, while my father's face reddened. You've always twisted things to make yourself the victim, Jackson interjected. We supported you in ways you don't even recognize. Name one, I challenged. One concrete way any of you supported my educational or professional journey. The silence was telling. Let me be clear, I continued. I don't owe anyone financial support based solely on genetic connection. My success wasn't made possible by your actions, it happened despite them. I succeeded because I found other mentors, other supporters, other believers when my own family refused those roles. So that's it, my father demanded. You've made your fortune, and now you're turning your back on family? What about everything we sacrificed for you growing up? What sacrifices specifically? I asked. I worked multiple jobs to put myself through college. I built my company without connections or seed money from family. Meanwhile, you invested emotionally and financially in Jackson's endeavors while actively undermining mine. My mother began to cry, the familiar tactic that had often ended conversations and cemented her position as the injured party. This time, I didn't respond with the usual guilt and backpedaling. I'm not turning my back on the concept of family, I clarified. I'm setting conditions for what a healthy relationship with me looks like. It requires mutual respect, recognition of my autonomy, an acknowledgement of past patterns. And if we don't agree to these conditions, my father asked coldly. Then we don't have a relationship, I answered simply. That would sadden me. But continuing as we have been is no longer an option. I won't participate in the dynamic where my achievements are diminished, my boundaries violated, and my success treated as a resource to be claimed, rather than an accomplishment to be celebrated. Jackson stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You've clearly been poisoned against your family by these California people. When this tech bubble bursts and you lose everything, don't come crying to us. That's your choice, I replied, not rising to the bait. And if that happens, I won't. Because unlike what's happened here today, I don't see family as a financial safety net. I see it as a source of emotional support, something I've found elsewhere when it wasn't available from you. My father stood next. I think we're done here. You've made your position clear. I have. I agreed. The question is whether you've heard it. When they left, I didn't feel the expected emotional collapse. Instead, I experienced something unexpected. Relief. I had finally stopped contorting myself to fit into their narrow definition of success and family obligation. I had named the patterns that had caused so much pain, without anger, but with clarity. I rejoined the party guests who had stayed an extra day: Zoe, Diana, Rachel, and a few close team members. We gathered on the beach below the villa, building a small bonfire as the sun began to set. How did it go? Zoe asked, passing me a glass of wine. They chose to leave rather than acknowledge any responsibility, I said. But for the first time, that feels like their loss, not mine. Diana nodded thoughtfully. Family dynamics are the hardest patterns to break because they're established before we have any say in the matter. What you did today took extraordinary courage. As darkness fell, the conversation flowed from career aspirations to travel plans, from technology trends to personal philosophies. I looked around the circle at these people who had become my chosen family, who supported without smothering, who celebrated without envy, who challenged without diminishing. Rachel, who had seen my potential when my parents couldn't, raised her glass. To building bridges that matter and having the wisdom to recognize which ones aren't worth the maintenance cost. We all laughed and raised our glasses. The ocean stretched before us, vast and full of possibility. Much like the future, I was continuing to build on my own terms, with my own definitions of success and connection. Later that night, alone in my beautiful home, I wrote in my journal for the first time in years. Today I learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by who sees your light and helps it shine brighter. Sometimes the hardest step in building the life you want is releasing the expectations of those who cannot or will not celebrate your journey. This doesn't mean abandoning hope for reconciliation, but refusing to shrink myself to avoid others' discomfort. The path forward feels clearer now, surrounded by chosen family, building meaningful connections, and creating impact through work I believe in. The Ocean Villa isn't just a symbol of financial success, but of the freedom to define my own worth, to establish healthy boundaries, and to fill my life with people who understand that true family lifts you up rather than holds you back. I closed the journal and walked to the balcony, breathing in the salt air and listening to the rhythm of waves against shore. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely at peace with my choices, not because they had finally been validated by those who had raised me, but because I had stopped requiring that validation to recognize my own worth. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own authentic path? Or experienced the challenge of setting boundaries with loved ones who don't understand your choices? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else navigating similar waters. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content about navigating complex relationships, building success on your own terms, and finding your authentic community. Thank you for joining me on this journey of growth and self-discovery. Remember, sometimes the family that matters most is the one you build, not just the one you're born into.